I'm Anna Stokes, Marketing Director here at Conscious Capitalism, Inc. On behalf of the entire CCI team, we appreciate you taking the time to learn and grow in community with us today. Today, we are joined by members of our DC chapter, Catherine Allen and Mike Corkery, to dive into one of the tenets of conscious capitalism, conscious culture. As many of you know, conscious capitalism is a philosophy that emphasizes the human nature of business, as well as a movement of business leaders from around the world working to change the practice and perception of capitalism as a means to elevate humanity. Conscious Capitalism, Inc. is a nonprofit organization dedicated to catalyzing that movement by creating learning opportunities like today's session and building systems of support for practicing conscious capitalists through our senior leader network membership and engagement with our local chapters. Several times a month, we offer virtual gatherings as a way for the community to see how this philosophy takes shape in the leadership journeys and business practices of those in our network. Each quarter this year, we are excited to be working closely with our chapters to highlight the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism, with today being our focus on conscious culture. Today's gathering will run for about 45 minutes. I will provide a very brief overview of conscious culture and a slide deck for you to take back to your teams to bring the learning back home. And then I'll invite Christina Johnson, the executive director of our DC chapter, to introduce Catherine and Mike. They will be in conversation for about 25 minutes, and then Christina will join us again, and we'll transition to audience questions during the last 10 to 15 minutes of our session. Please use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can during our time together. If you have any technical questions or issues, please email us at info@consciouscapitalism.org. So today we're going to take a closer look at conscious culture. And that starts by taking a look at our 4 tenets. So conscious culture is one of the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism, which, as you heard in the intro, is a philosophy and movement of leaders that believe business is a powerful force for good. Today, we're going to focus on conscious culture, but everything is connected to create your conscious business, with each tenet helping to frame the others. The other tenets to keep top of mind during our discussion are higher purpose, or the why of your business beyond just profits, stakeholder orientation, or creating mutually beneficial relationships across all groups your business touches, and conscious leadership, or the active cultivation of these tenets and practices by a purpose-driven leader. So conscious culture is about being intentional. You're working to make sure that your company's practices, values, and principles are clearly reflected in and reflective of your company's higher purpose and how it's integrated into everything you do, the people you hire and develop and how they approach their work and connect to other stakeholders, and the processes you put into place to get that work done. Conscious culture shows up differently in every business, but we found that certain qualities are generally present and, more importantly, actively nurtured in conscious companies. There's a great sense of trust across stakeholders, both internal and external, due in large part to the sense of accountability and integrity with which they do business. Conscious cultures are caring cultures that build spaces of belonging where people can bring their whole selves to work. They seek out and embrace diversity in all of its forms and create environments of lifelong learning. And finally, conscious cultures are transparent in their decision-making and communication and egalitarian in their team structures. And all of this creates fiercely loyal stakeholders who are committed to supporting the business's purpose and each other. We've put together several examples of conscious culture from our community that we invite you to take a closer look at after this call. They really underscore how conscious culture can look different from company to company, but also reinforce the presence of those qualities we saw in our previous slide across company size, industry, and company geography. Our first example is from Banfield Pet Hospital that shows conscious culture can and often must continue to evolve based on forces both internal and external to a company. We've already said that conscious culture is not a one-size-fits-all strategy, but it's also not a one-size-fits-always strategy. During the pandemic, Banfield intentionally shifted their internal culture to be supportive of psychological safety of their team, open educational pathways, and empower women. And of course, Banfield's growth over the past 5 years underscores that conscious practices do not preclude profits. We also encourage you to take a closer look at Scribe Media's Culture Bible, an internal document that they've made publicly available on their website to help all their stakeholders understand the purpose and values that they bring to their work. And if you dig in a little bit, you'll also find some great actionable tips throughout, like encouraging thoughtful feedback, not criticism, spending less time in meetings and more time doing, determining what's best rather than who's right, and encouraging a culture of question asking even when it might be hard. And finally, we take a look at Envision IT, where they're seeing 100% employee engagement and pretty spectacular customer satisfaction ratings that they are attributing to their values-driven culture. Envision is working to create long-term joy and fulfillment in their team, not circumstantial happiness. They've created safe spaces where team members can be fearless and have cultivated a constant state of learning, which leads to new innovations in product and service. They also practice mindful communication and encourage others to enjoy open dialogue, both internally and externally. If you're just getting started out with your conscious journey or diving more deeply into your culture work, we invite you to gather a group of diverse points of view from your company and start asking yourself some of these questions to the right here. I think many can agree that asking questions is frequently the best place to start. And if you're already pretty advanced in your conscious practice, we know you're already committed to lifelong learning and reflection, so perhaps these questions can spark new conversations to support your evolving journey. And this link should have already been dropped into the chat. If it hasn't already, it will be. And of course, the team at Conscious Capitalism, Inc. is always here to help on your journey as well. And we invite you to continue to explore our organization through our Senior Leader Network, events and resources, and the stories we tell about your conscious peers. And with that very quick summary of conscious culture, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Christina Johnson, our Executive Director at our Washington, D.C. chapter. And Christina, I'll let you take it from here.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Anna. I'm really happy to be here and to be welcoming our two guest speakers, Catherine Allen and Mike Corkery, today for a discussion about conscious culture and action. Catherine is the co-founder and CEO of AO People Partners, and she brings more than 25 years of experience working collaboratively with industry leaders, helping them and their organizations to thrive in both human behavioral and process aspects of performance and organizational effectiveness. As AO's CEO, her focus is on guiding her team to build the full suite of capabilities to help leaders really reimagine and create the culture that makes investing in conscious people development more integrated and holistic in their businesses. And quite frankly, I've worked for a good while with Catherine. She is also a very close friend of the CCDC chapter. So thank you for joining us this morning, Catherine. And next up, I'll be welcoming Mike Corkery, who is the president and CEO of Deltek. And for the past 10 years, he's been leading global efforts and his global team toward the company's mission of delivering superior enterprise software, information solutions, and consulting services to project-based businesses. He's headquartered in the Virginia area, actually in Herndon, Virginia, and Deltek is made up of roughly 3,000 employees who work virtually and in more than a dozen locations around the world. The culture at Deltek is really collaborative, compassionate, and has a customer focus, all of which help them constantly and consistently be best place to work. They've ranked that way several times, and in fact, 3 times by the Washington Post in the DC area as a top place to rank, a top large company to work for in the DC area. In addition, the company was named a best place to work in Asia for the 9th time just last year. Deltek serves 30,000 customers in project-based industries, including government contracting, architecture and engineering, construction, and creative agencies, ranging from small startups to some of the largest companies in these verticals. And Deltek's project-based ERP solutions are considered a leader in their industries and frequently earn accolades from companies including G2 and Nucleus Research. Since Mike became the CEO over at Deltek in 2012, the company more than doubled in size and has a real focus on people, customers, and growth. And I'm sure Mike will speak to that a little bit later when he joins with Catherine. Deltek has achieved outstanding financial performance and is really a best-in-class in employee. So today he's here to talk to us a little bit more about how conscious capitalism is driving his vision for Deltek and at Deltek. And so Catherine and Mike, we are so excited to have you both here today. And I'm going to hand it over to you all so that you can get us started and kick us off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina, for that introduction. It is a real honor to be here today and to be in conversation with Mike Corkery about conscious culture. I'm looking forward to you all discovering why I believe that Mike is not only a conscious leader, but he is stewarding a very conscious culture. So welcome, Mike, and let's get started.
Great, thanks to be here, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Let's get started. If there's anything else that you would like to briefly tell us about Deltek, why don't we start there?
Well, I think Christina did a great job covering it. So, Deltek's the leading provider of software and solutions for project-based businesses globally. The thing that ties our customers together is they run their business on a project-by-project basis daily. And so our solutions give those businesses unique insight into how their business works and how it runs, and then how we can help them perform more effectively. We refer to our ecosystem as Deltek Project Nation. We love to geek out on projects with our customers. We're 3,200 strong globally. The company really interestingly started in the DC area. It was a father and son accounting team that just had a good idea in their basement, where, that was in the early 80s. And now we've grown to be, over 2 million users, 30,000 customers, 3,200 employees, and, approaching $1 billion in revenue. We have been a public company twice. We've been owned by private equity. We're now the largest portfolio company of Roper Technologies, which is a technology conglomerate with roughly 50 companies inside of its portfolio. We're the largest company inside that portfolio, and they're like a Berkshire Hathaway or Danaher type conglomerate with a very small corporate center headquartered in Sarasota, Florida, and all the businesses run independently as part of their ecosystem. And it's been we've been with Roper now 4 years. That will be Deltek's permanent home. They don't sell businesses, and it's been a fabulous 4 years. And we had a great 2021. We're off to a fast start in 2022, and excited to be here today to talk about conscious culture, which is a topic that I am personally very passionate about, and something that's really important to us at Deltek.
Great. Well, let's find out why you're so passionate and get into the conversation. So, and I also love to hear how companies get started. So those, the basement start of a company is always fun to hear about. So you guys focus a lot with your team on building your culture. And so just want to lay the groundwork by having you share with us why the focus on culture is so important to your business.
Well, Christina mentioned that we really run the business around three pillars, right? People, customers, and growth. And our view is if we invest in our team and have a differentiating culture and a place where people can build their career, and Deltek is a great place to work, they will invest in customer success. Customer success will allow us to hit our growth objectives. If we grow, we can invest in people, we can invest in customers and solutions and technology the way that we would like to. No one of those elements is more important than the other. They're inexorably tied. We feel like culture is at the center of all of that, because we want our team to feel that Deltek is a great place to work. We want them to be proud to work for the company, be passionate about what they do every day, be very invested in that. That's going to manifest itself in better performance for customers, and also just better, overall financial performance. There is a bit of a selfish motivation, right? We think the company will perform better if we have a great culture. And I think that's been measured that, companies with great employee engagement outperform the S&P 500. So there's a lot of measurables that support that. So look, there's a bit of a selfish motivation there. If there's a couple of hours of discretionary time in a given week, we want folks to give it to us. And, selfishly, I've been a part of great cultures. I mean, I work for Nextel, that some of you may be familiar with in the DC area, which, had a fantastic culture. And I've been some other places that didn't have a great culture. And, I'm not interested in being part of something that had a culture where it was more about, fear and intimidation to get more out of you, as opposed to motivation and, draw you into being engaged and proud of the company that you work for, and proud of what you deliver, love who you do it with. and feel like you can build your career there. So we just feel like that's the kind of place that we all want to be and thrive. We're very careful about the leaders we bring on, that they need to believe in that. And just, the people that join us in general have to be focused on, maintaining that kind of an environment. We think it's going to differentiate us and make us better.
Awesome. Awesome. We all know that all companies have a culture, of course, but not every company is intentional about the way they develop their culture to promote their values and their purpose. But you all seem to be very focused on how you use your core values. And so I'd love it if you could give us some examples of how you use your core values to reinforce Deltek's culture.
Yeah, I think, some companies, the culture is, a tchotchke you have in your cube, it's on coffee cups and stuff. That's not the way that we go about it. The way that we tee up our values, and there's, 9 values with, integrity is the foundation that the values build off of. The way that we think about it is the values define how we treat each other and how we engage with our customers. And, really simply, we tell our team that, if those are things that aren't important to you or don't seem like they should govern your interactions with your teammates or with customers or other people in our ecosystem, partners, et cetera, this may not be the place for you. So when we're very, again, intentional about people that join us, that we screen for the intentionality around the values with them too. We very specifically screen, hey, are those things that are important to them? We use the values in our language around recognition. So we celebrate when people demonstrate the values in terms of our ongoing recognition program. So again, it's less about symbolism, more about behavior, that we try to reinforce the values, and they're a really important component of how we go about what we do every day.
Right, great. I know that for just in the work that we've done, looking at your core values, I could see how they show up you use them as tools in a way.
And the other thing I'd say, Catherine, we evolve them too, right? So we, more than a couple of years ago, we added diversity and inclusion, right? Then we added the E, so it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. We, basically added, integrity as a value. We're like, what? That's table stakes. So that was more foundational and less of a value, more just a foundation that we would build on. So we try to evolve them so they speak to our team on a regular basis as to how we're trying to evolve the business too.
And I know that you all have used them from a tool standpoint in the way you interview and select your senior level candidates. You use them in the way you onboard and develop your leaders and employees. So they have a kind of a working function for you all to support your business.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, we got some help with that particular tool from you and your team, which is that we have a tool that we provide leaders to interview candidates that screens against behaviors that align with the values that really define what success at Deltek would look like. And so to try to de-risk the hiring process, and also, frankly, take any unconscious bias out of any of the hiring process, just identify people for talent and behavior, and separate those folks from the talent pool, so we can identify folks who are going to thrive in our environment much more easily. So that's a really, really important component. The other thing is our professional development programs that you mentioned. We invest a lot of time in providing development tools internally for our team, both leadership development, as well as folks who are single contributors that aspire to be leaders. And we inject our values into those professional development elements. And how people can see those manifest themselves, both in terms of your behaviors to be a leader, and also as a leader, how you want to make sure that you're guiding and mentoring people in the same regard around those values. So it's they're pretty foundational to what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about how the pandemic has affected Deltek's culture. I know this is a topic that many in the audience are dealing with in their companies. It's all top of mind for us. And I'm particularly curious, since you all have focused so much on culture prior to the pandemic, how has that focus and investment in your culture served you during the pandemic?
Well, I think it's served us well, but frankly, it's a big challenge we're spending a lot of time on. So if you go back to when it's the end of the first quarter in 2020, we were fortunate that, at least a third, if not 40% of our team works virtually on a daily basis, given the nature of what we do. We also had been very willing to hire people on a virtual basis prior to that in certain parts of our business where, we were willing to find talent where it was rather than just where we happen to have an office. So we had a lot of people that were virtual. So, we were fortunate that when the pandemic struck and became something of the significance that it did at the end of the first quarter, we went virtual almost overnight, and we're able to pull that off and be pretty successful in doing that because we had that capability already in our toolkit. The thing that we said to our team is first of all, we're going to step up the communications. We feel like we're pretty communicative with the team, but we stepped it up pretty dramatically, and we said that the safety and health of our team is going to be paramount in everything that we do as we try to navigate through this, which, we're thinking, middle of the year, we'll kind of be on the other end of this thing. Right. And and here we are, 2 years later, but, and I think our culture really served us well during that period of time because, one of our core values is collaboration, right? One of our core values is speed. One of our core values is customer focus. And so, what we said was, look, those things can't change because, we're going through a lot, we're going virtual, we have to deal with a lot inside of Deltek, but, by the same token, we have customers globally, 30,000 of them that are relying on us. We need to deliver for them. And by the way, their business is changing. Their world just got rocked like ours did. And so we need to make sure that we can deliver for them. And so those are really the two things that we focused on: safety and health of our team, delivering for our customers. And then the third thing was, we said we wanted to emerge from the pandemic stronger than we went in it. So where we had the ability to invest, technologically, where we had the ability to extend our capabilities that we were going to be able to leverage exiting the pandemic, we weren't going to stop that. We were going to continue to do that. Now, we had to take some action, like a lot of other businesses did, to navigate the pandemic. We asked 1,000 people to take a pay cut. We had to furlough some people. We did a lot of things in response to what was happening to the top line of our business. Fortunately, we were able to do well enough in terms of we grew revenue, we grew EBITDA during that period of time. We were able to refund at the end of the year all the pay cuts that we had taken from people, which was a really big deal. We were able to pay a modest bonus because of our performance. So we were able to navigate it pretty successfully. But the thing that we worry about is that, we've kind of muscled through it, right? And so our culture, which was very engaging, had a lot of mentorship and apprenticeship to it as we were bringing new employees on. How do you maintain that in a virtual world? And that's something that we've been really, really focused on, throughout the pandemic, and continue to be focused on as, we've entered what's going to be a much more permanently virtual working world. The other thing is, sustainable productivity. Again, we, feel like our team muscled through a period of time. How can we make sure we're continuing to put people in a position that they can be comfortably productive in the new environment that they're in, without some of that day-to-day mentorship, apprenticeship, and engagement with their colleagues, and trying to create ways that they can, replace that in a virtual world. And it's an ongoing challenge. We certainly haven't cracked the code. We think about it a lot, and we're investing a lot of time and in a lot of cycles to try to make progress in that regard.
Well, I think you've done a really great job of articulating how many in the audience would describe their challenge in transitioning to what's going to be a much more permanent virtual or, flexible work environment, and what's the impact on culture. I've heard you say that culture is like a bucket, and I'm wondering if you can tell us what you mean by that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, culture, every business is going to have ups and downs, right? Every company is going to have quarters that are better than others, years that are better than others, and so the pandemic is a great example. Like some of the things that we had to do, again, I talked about the pay cut, we had to stop the 401k match. We had to do a lot of things that, seem for some of us pretty familiar back when there was the financial crisis and all that. And my view is you build up a trust in the team through, a positive culture where you're filling the bucket during good times, right? And, we're investing in our team and we're doing, things that, continue to buttress our culture and buttress the team's trust, and pride in the business. And then when something like the pandemic hits, quite honestly, you got to draw down on that bucket a little bit, right? But then you got to work to refill it again. And so, we drew down on the bucket, no doubt, during the pandemic, but we've worked pretty hard to refill it. And 2021, coming out of the pandemic, we talked about emerging stronger than we went in it. We had a fabulous 2021, which I think, we're really proud to talk about that with the team, because that's, emblematic of the fact that they came out of it stronger than we went in. We had a fantastic year. We're going to be able to deposit into the bucket in a lot of different ways coming out of 2021. And so I think that's kind of how we refer to it, that, you got to make sure you're depositing in. You're going to have to draw down once in a while, but, when you have the opportunity, you just got to make deposits into that bucket, because you're going to have to draw down on it at some point.
I love how you have basically, you describe really having an abundance mindset or a growth mindset around how you want to emerge. It's not just we're going to survive the pandemic, the company's going to survive, but you actually describe it as we're actually going to be better because of this. And I really love how you think about going through adversity, and the pandemic has been adversity for sure.
Well, I think customer dependency is part of that, right? So, for example, our customers were being forced to work more virtually. And so, we took our product roadmap and we reoriented it and said, okay, anything that enables virtual work for our customers, we have to pull that forward, and not only pull it forward, accelerate it. And so invest more in it. So, as we emerged from 2021, our virtual tool set, it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than it was. And it was delivered a lot faster than it otherwise would have been because of the changing conditions. So it's just being able to adapt to, what our customers need too, right? And that's the dialogue with customers, understanding what delivery for them means, that it's going to change over time, and just trying to stay in touch with that as best we could.
Yeah, boy, if that's not adaptivity and innovation, what a great example of those two things. I want to shift and talk a bit about a particular aspect of a conscious culture, and that is continuous learning. As you know, we at AO People Partners specialize in helping leaders build strong learning and development cultures, and we know that you all are very committed to that. You also know that to create that kind of culture successfully, leaders have to be very intentional about it. So I'm wondering if you can share with us just a bit about why you feel growing the learning and development as a culture aspect of Deltek is so important to the future of your business and for your employees.
Well, for our business, we feel like we have the best team in our target industries, especially now with the Great Resignation and whatnot. More important than ever that we create a culture where people feel like they can build their career with us, that they don't feel like they have to look elsewhere, and they can continue to develop, they continue to meet their personal objectives, professional enrichment, and it's up to us to provide programmatically things that they can access in that regard. I think the other thing is that we talk about, we didn't talk about it specifically in terms of our values, but we want to encourage our team to contribute in their communities too. We've implemented a volunteer time off program where, our view is if we help people become better, just in general, better people, they'll become better people and contribute more to Deltek, they'll contribute more to their communities too. And so we think it's really important to contribute in that way as well. And that, that was something that we were maybe a little more silent and maybe less intentional about historically. We've become much more intentional about it over the last 2 to 3 years. And we think that differentiates us, that if you can create that kind of an environment where, people, again, proud to work for the company that they're a part of, love who they do it with, really enjoy what they do, gain enrichment from it, that not only helps them professionally, but they can, take back to communities that are meaningful to them. We think that's an incredibly powerful tool to continue to engage employees and continue to attract talent on a differentiated basis as well. So again, we think it's the right thing to do, but also there's a selfish motivation to it that we also think it's going to help us build the best team and have the best outcomes as a result.
Yeah, well, one of the things I really see with our clients is that the focus on creating and fostering a strong learning and development culture really lifts the other aspects of your culture. It builds more engagement because it's inherently engaging. It builds people's careers and a sense of loyalty. And so for a bang for buck view of culture, learning and development, it's a really great investment for all the reasons that we know, and a contribution as well to society, we believe.
Yeah, we totally agree. And again, we think that, people they'll recognize it when they see it, right? And, as compared to other places that they may have been, and they'll want to, continue to be a part of it. And also, it'll attract other people to join us. So we think it's a pretty important differentiator that we can continue to leverage.
That's great. That's great. Last question before we open up for Q&A is just what's your best advice to leaders that are wanting to be more conscious in the way they cultivate their cultures, their business cultures?
Boy, I think it starts with being really careful about, and I'll speak from my role, right? Just leading Deltek, you have to be incredibly careful about the leaders that you bring onto your team. And I think that has to have a cascading effect. They have to be really careful about who they bring onto their team. So it can fall apart pretty quickly if it's just, a message from on high that nobody is going to cascade across the rest of the team. And again, I think it's just making sure that your team is intentional about it, and also is really, really bought into the notion, and they bring people on that it's important to them, and it has a self-fulfilling aspect to it. And then it's got to be more than just talking about it. It's got to be recognizing that performance in ways where it's meaningful to people. And then I think it has a way of proliferating across the organization. It's become pretty organic. Deltek's a far different place now. I thought I started as a CFO in 2010. I thought it had a great culture then. I think our culture is way beyond where it was then. And I thought it was a great place to work when I started. And I think it's just because it was important to us, just everybody, and it's continued to have a momentum to it. And we've continued to bring people on that are intentional about building it and being passionate about it. And I think that's the most important advice that I would give folks, that if you've got leaders that are all about it, that it'll have the organic effect that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect example of how conscious leadership dovetails and supports conscious culture, because it comes down to how conscious our leaders are going to be. Will your leaders be? Are your leaders? How committed are they to that? And that's just a really great example.
We have a saying that we use a lot: no brilliant jerks allowed, right? That's kind of a cleaned up version of a rule some other folks may have heard of elsewhere, right? And so, and basically, you have to be able to work across the organization, work with your colleagues, successfully. And, if you're the smartest person in the room and you know it, and you're going to let everybody else know it, you're kind of going to stick out and you're going to have a hard time. And so, we're looking for people that are willing to work with others and whatnot. That's just an example. And I think if you're really intentional about those kinds of things, they spread quickly, which we've been fortunate to have that happen.
That's great. All right, Christina. Well, we'd love to turn it over to you to see what questions we might have from our audience.
Glad to rejoin the conversation with you both. We've got Sandy Parker, whose first question was for Mike. And Mike, what she wanted to know is if you could sort of expound upon sustainable productivity piece you were talking about, maybe share a little bit about what you've found to be effective in terms of virtual engagement. And I'm assuming that's since the start of the pandemic, or even before then, because I know that Deltek did have a plan for folks working virtually prior to that and engaging virtually. So if you could, again, just expound upon the sustainable productivity that you were speaking of and share a little bit about virtual engagement and what you found to be effective? That would be
Sure.
great.
I would say we're still a work in progress. So, far from a finished product in this regard, but maybe I'll talk about the engagement piece first. So one of the things that we found that we had to do better was engage virtual employees, because when we had people in a variety of locations and you had some people that would work virtually, our method of engagement was kind of to draw them back into one of the locations that we had and engage that way. We can't do that any longer. So much more recurring, frequent, cascading communications from leaders, making sure that we're really intentional about high quality development conversations with individual employees, even if it's on a virtual basis. And so I would just say, encouraging everybody in terms of cascading communications, frequency, and high quality, to make sure that we're focused on that. We're not all the way there yet, but that's one of the things we're trying to push down. The other thing is manufacturing ways that people can engage. So someone who's a new sales rep used to be able to walk to the cube next door and be like, hey, let me ask you a question. When I come across this situation, what do I do? Create more virtual, coffee shops, happy hours. And I know a lot of it's trite, but just try to create, watering hole or water cooler type instances where people can connect and engage and have some kind of conversation that would replace in person. We're not all the way there again. So we're trying a few different things. Some of them work, some of them don't. Some, functional areas are better than others. And so we're trying a lot of different things and a lot of different tools across the organization, encouraging our leaders, use what works for you, but do something to make sure that you engage your team on a much more recurring basis. So that's the engagement side. In terms of sustainable productivity, there's kind of the hard-hearted results part of it, where, I'm pushing my team a lot to make sure that you can measure how productive you are. Because people are saying, we're way more productive that we're virtual. It's like, how do you know? How do you know? So is the engineering team producing more software? Sales is pretty easy because there's quota retirement and there's bookings, but there's other parts of the organization that, it's harder to measure how productive you're being. So I'm pushing our leaders to make sure that they've got measurables around that, but also celebrate those measurables too, right? And as the team continues to achieve in this environment, let's put it in a positive light rather than make it, the unrelenting pace of measurement, right? So we need to measure so we know, and then make sure that we're enabling too. There's a lot of tools that we're putting out there. We're leveraging Microsoft Teams now far more than we did before. We had rolled it out right before the pandemic started. We've got a lot of other tools that are coming that our IT team is working on. And so again, trying to put our teams in the best position we can. It's not all about the next tool. It's about being intentional about, being productive and being engaged. So we're kind of a work in progress here, but those are some of the things we focused on.
Thanks for sharing that, Mike. And I'm going to take two more questions, if you don't mind, Mike, from the audience. It's 3:40. We wrap at 3:45. So just being mindful of time, I do want to get these to you, though. Jill asks, Michael, can you share any details of your employee community volunteer program? And I know there's a lot going on with that, and it's very regionalized. So if you could speak to that, Jill, Michael, for Jill, that would be excellent.
Sure. So what we did a long time ago is we picked a couple of causes that were really meaningful to Deltek that we were going to get behind as a business, because rather than be diffused, just given our size, while we're bigger than some companies, we're not all that big compared to a lot of others. We chose Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which is something that's personally important to me, along with some other members of our leadership team, and Europe, which is a fabulous program that we partner with the DC chapter that enables youth to achieve career aspirations that otherwise may not be attainable to them. So those were two causes that we put the company's muscle behind. And then what we encourage people to do is bring your own causes to Deltek as well, and try to build some support from your other colleagues. And then we wanted to give people, time off to be able to go exercise that either in their own community with other colleagues, so we could provide some sweat equity beyond, company resources against it. And you brought up a really important point, Christina. Europe and LLS don't resonate in our Nordic offices, right? That might not be appropriate in the UK. So we wanted to give people then the ability to also engage in their local community in a way that was meaningful. So that's how we try to do it, really through more flexibility and being able to engage the other resources, in terms of sweat equity the company had, in addition to a couple of causes that we as a business put some financial support behind.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to do this last question. And actually, what I'm going to do is do a 2-for-1. Sarah Elvaney and Tom Dowdy have related questions. So Sarah says, does Deltek have a higher purpose and how was it developed? And I know you can speak to that quickly, Mike, but this is what I would add. Tom then chimed in and said, tell me a little bit about how you're assessing or evaluating candidates for fit. Like, what are some of the specific resources or practices that you guys are using to determine values alignment? And sort of ensuring that there's a culture driver right at the onset of hiring. And I think those two things are connected. And I know you've already shared a little bit about that with me. So I know you can take.
So I'll try to cover the first one in 30 seconds. So our higher purpose is, better software means better projects. Our customers do amazing stuff. They build satellites, they build stadiums, they build things that make it and deliver things that make it a better world. And so we're proud of the fact that we have a small part in that. And so that's our higher purpose, is that, better software means better projects. Our customers deliver better outcomes to their customers. And those things are just amazing achievements that make the world a better place. And so we are proud to support that. In terms of bringing people on board, we actually partnered with Catherine and Ed and their organization around a tool that I mentioned earlier, where we try to screen candidates for behaviors that will resonate inside of Deltek. So we tried to spend a lot of time in assessing what does success inside of Deltek look like? What are the characteristics that our best leaders have? And so then we took that and said, how do we screen for those characteristics with inbound candidates, with a very specific set of questions and a consistency where, multiple people will talk to an inbound candidate looking for those characteristics and then try to align around the best fit candidate that has those things, because we think that gives that person a much higher likelihood to be a great Deltek leader than it otherwise would have if everybody was kind of using their own interview style and, trying to tease out what was important to them. So alignment around those core behaviors, core values, we think helps de-risk the hiring process pretty dramatically.
Thank you for sharing that and doing that so quickly, Mike. You and Catherine are fantastic and such a dynamic duo. I feel like this has been somewhat, to an extent, like speed dating. We're going through such important stuff in such a short amount of time, but I do think that our audience has gotten quite a bit from our engagement today. In fact, we have consultants that have written in just to say how appreciative they are of what's been shared. Gina Romero actually said that she tells people all the time, everyone wants to work with happy people, and happier people work harder. So having fun while doing it just is an added bonus and makes everybody, the business and the people, more successful overall. So I think you all are resonating with a lot of our viewers today. I just want to thank all of those viewers, speaking of those engaged on the chat and who have joined us today. I just want to thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time and your engagement around the conscious capitalism movement and our first tenet. If you don't mind, please take 30 seconds to fill out the survey in the chat box to help us plan for future programming. It's critical for us because we really are committed to process improvement and doing so based on how you all feel and what you're getting. We want to drive value in this organization. It's a Survey Monkey link, and I think it's already on there. And then if you're new to Conscious Capitalism, please feel free to visit consciouscapitalism.org for more information about our movement and our organization. That's www.consciouscapitalism.org. Next, if you're an executive currently implementing conscious practices in your business, we do invite you to explore our growing support system of like-valued leaders in our Conscious Capitalism Senior Leader Network. And feel free to visit that at consciouscapitalism.org/senior-leaders to learn and join, perhaps even. And we hope to see you at tomorrow's virtual gathering with Paul Rice. He's the founder and CEO of Fair Trade USA. He'll share some insights into creating systematic change and innovation models for responsible businesses and sort of evaluate, look at, discuss what's next for the fair trade movement. There will be a link for that as well. Again, Mike and Catherine, it's always a pleasure to have you all join. Anna, thank you so much for bringing us all together, and Kim as well. The staff at Conscious Capitalism is fantastic and comes up with great programming. And to all of our viewers and participants today, thank you again for joining, and we hope that you have a great afternoon. Take care, guys.
Thanks,
everybody. Take care.
Take good care.